isn't the plan, just by the way. This isn't, oh, okay, that's funky. Now I would like to announce some guests of honor. So, first of all, I would like to thank Dream Club, Jeff Suter, Jada Burnett, Elizabeth Parker, Erin Mott, Mrs. Clausen, Fredriana Williams, Megan, how do you pronounce it? Easler, Mr. Vandenberg, Mr. Exon, Mr. Monticelli, and Mrs. Cardamone. Now, these are the people that have either contributed to the speech or helped me put it together. But of course, the guests of actual honor here include Grace Pazmino over there in the audience. She was the absolute inspiration for this speech, 100%. And she has motivated me. We've done things together involving activism, and I couldn't be more proud to have a business partner. So, and then, of course, my mother, Catherine, who I think my personality reflects her, so I thank her for getting that gene. My girlfriend here, G, will be running the slides, and she's been a huge support. She made mac and cheese for me last night because I was crying over this. And Mr. Provenzano is like our star guest because he's the one that needs to hear this today. So naturally. So, I would like to say, I will be addressing basically the lack of certain representations in the curriculum, including life skills, current events, the arts, and certain minorities. And I want to tell you guys this. I know you, particularly the adults here, are here because you care. I know you want the change, and I'm not trying to yell at you. You're part of the solution, and I need your help. First, though, you have to listen to a passionate junior share their burning thoughts. And my goal is that this will be a reality check for you. We know these issues, and we are talking about them, as I recently found out. It's great. But I want us to talk more. I want board members and students to come together and talk about these things so we can have an educational revolution. Okay. That being said, I think life skills and current events go hand in hand. They both discuss the world now, and we need to know both to be able to discuss the world to now. As for economic life skills in particular, we're transitioning into adulthood here. We're 16 and 17, and we don't really know how to get jobs or make a bank account, mortgage, stocks, or business. And you know, economics, it's a course here, and that's wonderful, but it's a single semester course that's half a year in 4 years that we get to learn about things like this. The good news is it's required to graduate. And we have things like the Career Exploration Center. I'm sad Mrs. Hudak couldn't be here, but she runs a seminar that is great for helping kids figure out what they want to be and where they want to go with their lives. It's a yearly course, and that's great, but I just don't think it's enough. I think we should require that kids visit their Exploration Center at least once a year, especially as we get older, because that's when we're going to find our jobs. I think we should also have people from different departments come in to present how to get jobs and what the experience so we know what classes we can take in order to fulfill it. Just as important as economic life skills. As an American, I don't know my own rights, laws, or the social or political movements in the world. I don't know my rights, laws, or the social political movements in the world, and it's so sad that it has to be said like that. And I get it. We teach history to prevent horrible things that happened in the past, but I can't tell you those things. I can tell you about how Columbus saved America, or lots of books that I'm not going to remember in a few years, you know? As Grace Pazmino said, we have to learn history to not repeat our past mistakes, but we also have to educate ourselves on current events, or else we'll be learning those topics as history tomorrow. I don't know about these pushing movements or what I can do to impact them, what's going on outside. I think it's great that we do somewhat connect current events to the past, to the history. It's wonderful. But I think we need an elective or unit in social studies on current events, or even in ELA, you know? Let's talk about things like, you taught us the collapse of the economy in the 30s, but why don't we learn about the next one? When's it gonna come? What can we do to stop it, and how can we help? You know, the movements of today and the solutions of predictions of these possible events in the future are what's gonna save ourselves tomorrow. Let's learn about how the world works. You know, we're teens. We're learning, and it's okay. Okay. Next. There's not a very good segue to this, but an overarching Fairport minority that is very easy to pass over is those inclined to the arts instead of STEM. We have exceptional programs for the arts here. It's wonderful. We have so many elective choices, but we don't really get the status or attention that we deserve as students. As I said, there's plenty of electives, and we do have to do, I think, some art classes to be required to graduate, something like that. We have exceptional talent in art in particular. We have the art show to represent us, and it's a very good reputation of the arts department. The music program is amazing here. I will tell you this. You know, you let us go to lessons. We have different band levels, all county and all state, and we've started to announce the events. That's a push that hasn't been done before, which is wonderful. But the fact of the matter is, some children are only arts inclined instead of science or math or things like that. And I'll let you in on something. So you know, around like 3rd grade, you've all kind of figured out whether you're good at math, you know, science, arts, music, stuff like that. And you know this situation. All right, kids, we're gonna draw something. And you know, everyone's like, okay, well, okay, I guess I'll draw. But then there's that one art kid. You know the person. You. And don't tell anybody, I told you that. The reason we like hide in the back all the time is because we're doing spells. Because when that time rolls around for us to draw something, we're like, and then Picasso pops out and finishes it for us. Don't tell anybody that I told you that though. I do it, just don't tell anybody. But anyway, people, my point here is that I feel like, you know, you wouldn't force a math kid to do art. And so my point is that when people are like, whoa, how did you draw that so easily? I have that same question. For people that get countless hundreds on things in STEM words, we can't all be expected to learn on the same one-track path. And I feel like the best work of students comes through passion. So why not let me do something that I'm passionate about so I can produce my tip-top work? You know, I think the best solution would be to make the arts requirements, like how many you have to take, the same as STEM requirements. Have that balance so we can all experience everything. Or, the opposite, let us have choices with classes. Let us kind of choose our track. If we want to take more arts classes than STEM, I think that should be just fine. And on a little bit of a side note, sports and academics, it's just a general feeling that those are the most prioritized things here. Like, I think what we can do is instead of just sports announcements, let's talk about, like we started doing music announcements, art features, solos, poems, all state and all county. And I feel like at the end of the day, if we hype something up like that on the announcements, people are gonna naturally be more interested, and it might go up on the priority list. It may even bring in money if we were to fundraise off of these things. So now, rough segue again, but it's okay. One of the largest oppressed Fairport minorities, not that we're necessarily oppressed, is LGBTQ people. Like again, we're not really oppressed here. We have a great support system. It's not really that it lacks in that. We just lack in our share of history and curriculum. You see, I feel like we only learn for LGBT for a week. There's great things like LGBTQ History Month. There's the Wall of Alumni. That's wonderful that it stays up all year. There's GSA and there's overall support, you know? But when we actually start talking about LGBTQ, we start walking on eggshells every time. No one wants to speak up if I bring up LGBTQ things. And as a result, you have like teachers having to ask students to define terms like transgender and lesbian. We shouldn't have to teach that. The teachers should teach that. This is things that are in our culture today. We should be able to learn it from you know? There should be an LGBTQ unit, not just an elective. It should be normal. It shouldn't be something special. Let's teach about history like How many of you know what Stonewall is? Not a lot of adults, okay. That is the reason we have pride, and I encourage you to look it up. I'd like us to learn about Stonewall and members in it such as Frida Kahlo and Sylvia Rivera and Marsha. No, Frida Kahlo, it was not in Stonewall, but people like her and Marsha P. Johnson. I'd also love if we could talk about the history of pronouns and terms and identities in English. There's actually the they, them pronouns is now singular in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. And let's talk about the erasure that has led to why we don't have that LGBTQ history now. Let's bring LGBT literature. Let's talk about the difference between orientation, sex, and gender. But my biggest goal is for GSA to not be seen as a closed club, because it's not. I want to hear what allies have to say. Let's just make being LGBT not special, because it's not. So many of us are. And of course, one of the largest minorities groups in Fairport is people of color. And I got the pleasure of interviewing many Dream Club members for this section. Now, something great that Mr. Provenzano has done is there was a meeting at the Rochester Convention Center that Grace and I spoke at that was so outrageously enlightening, but I feel like it shouldn't have to be. We talked about race issues. And you know, Provenzano did come in and he talked to Dream Club. He asked us what we wanted. And it's so much better late than never, and I'm absolutely happy to have him as a superintendent. You see, I know that teachers have started meeting and talking about race issues. There's the Diversity Council, and these are great things that we're actually starting to talk about it, but I feel like it's late. But it's wonderful at the same time. Now this is what Dream Club has told me. For some of them, they said to me, when I asked them, where do you see a representation? They said to me, I've never talked about this before today. I feel that's a bit outrageous. Because Fairport is walled off from people of color culture. There's like stereotypes about city kids, you know? I've been told there's a pressure to act white, and that some people are ashamed for being darker skinned. That's very upsetting. You know, the history of America isn't white, and I feel like we pretend it is. You know, we glorify our founding fathers who are white, but we don't talk about the slaves that Washington had. We don't teach our young children that Columbus murdered 90% of the indigenous peoples here. We glorify them. You know, I'm sure you all know, about a month ago, the do-rag situation. We started with the board's support, and that's wonderful. And I'm very happy because, you know, they let us do the walkout, and that's an amazing step. I think we should expand on that. We haven't really talked about the walkout. Let's talk about it. It was so big. It's our first step of activism as Dream Club. Because, you know, the do-rags didn't really trigger the walkout, but it gave us a reason to do it. It was the first clear-cut reason besides this kid said the N-word. Or, you know, this kid said, you know, can I touch your hair? And, like, this gave us a clear-cut reason. We gotta talk about things like this, like the N-words, origin, hijab, do-rags, non-white literature. And speaking of literature, I've heard that multicultural literature is coming next year as an elective, and that's wonderful. But like I said, it shouldn't be an elective. It is clearly just, it should be in the curriculum. It's so simple that we should balance. I'd love it if we could balance out white culture, Hispanic, Black, everything, all into one history class. Now, I'm sure none of the teachers here have ever taken a mental health day, or students, right? You know, like maybe Webster, maybe Penfield, but we're too good for that, right? Well, no, of course not. You know, maybe the reason we feel like we can't is because there's curricular stigma as to mental health's true impact and its importance. However, we're making wonderful strides. Mr. Monticelli has run the Your Mind Matters, which is something that is absolutely huge. You don't have to read that, I know it's better. There's things like Stop the Stigma, I'm wearing my pin right now, that actually is a seminar for Fairport overall, and I think Rochester, where we can just talk about mental health. The psychologists here, like Mrs. Cardamom, are absolutely exceptional, by the way. If you ever need support, they will actually help you. But I've heard that New York State has required mental health in its curriculum since June 2018. I just don't see it. You know, we have one semester of health class, one unit in 4 years. Mental health is a constant thing, people. It's not something that can be talked about in one unit in a half semester course. As Emily Wall has said to me, they very lightly talk about it in health, but I think, well, which is not true anymore. I think it's been much more covered. But I think everyone tiptoes around mental health for some reason because it's a sensitive topic. And so it gets into the cycle of stigma, sensitivity, and not talking about it. It just repeats. It's negatively viewed in the sense that people don't really ask for help because they don't want to be seen as different or not normal. And as a result, these children don't get help until years after symptoms. Teachers, by the way, of course experience it too. And you know, how can they help others when they can't even help themselves? But students and teachers, I feel like there's this impression that you should push yourself, go to school, get through it, it'll distract you. But that just leads to us not talking about it. This can result in these people having low performance, motivation, or concentration, particularly in the students. And the reason is because there's lack of resources. We don't know our coping methods. It's great that health is a yearly course, and I think a great solution would be, or not as yearly, I think we should have it as a yearly course for everyone, like from middle school, because symptoms of mental illness start at age 14. I think Mr. Vandenberg proposed an extra gym class with a unit for mental health, which I don't think would cost any more money. It's great that we have these podcasts of personal situations. We need to hear those personal situations. And I'm very proud of the people who have gone out and done it. I think we should talk more about these podcasts, though. There's programs like the Survival Buddies, the New York State School Mental Health Programs, and overall, adjust for people with mental illness. Don't make us adjust to you. Don't let us have mental health days off, literal ones. I think the best solution is to educate teachers of symptoms, how to help people, coping mechanisms, perhaps in a class over the summer. Mental health's an everyday thing, like I said. Now, Mrs. Priel is back there, and I definitely consider her a model teacher when it comes to mental health. I've had such a delight coming in and freely talking about things like this because she's free about it. She won't hide things. She'll talk about the yucky topics. And that's the whole reason I'm here, to talk about these yucky topics. Now, with that being said, I'd like to say that I know it's not the teacher's fault. We have a common core. I feel like the government controls this, but learning doesn't happen in federal buildings. It happens here. We should be controlling it. It's in our classes. Students and teachers have the first-hand experience of all of this. We should be running the show. And I think we should be taught how to change the government in that sense. I think the best way to go about it is to write petitions and letters. I'll personally help you with that. But we should start doing it. Now, to start, we must talk. But, like I said, let's talk. Let's talk about how, when it comes to the arts and current events, and let's bring more coverage of it so we can prioritize it. Let's talk about the different paths of success regarding arts. Let's connect life skills and current events to the past. And as for minorities, oppressed or not, there's lots of ignorance overall. So I think if we just talked about it, we could bring some normalization and bring community and unity. The biggest program that I've seen that we just started is called Community Circles, and it's open to absolutely everyone. And if you identify with something, whether it's religion, race, mental health, disability, sexual orientation, gender, sexuality, you can come and do things like that. And so with that, I have some questions for all of you. When it comes to life skills and current events, why are these important? Why do we need them? On the contrary, why might history be more important than current events? Are the arts as important as STEM curriculum? Do the arts get proper status in the American school system, in Fairport in particular? As for LGBTQ people, what do you know about the LGBT community? What would you like to know? For people of color, when did you first realize you were a minority in Fairport because of your skin? How can we diversify this instead? And as for mental illness, how important is mental health to you? And do you feel supported here? I'd like you just all at your general tables to talk about this for a bit and then get back to me. Right now, if you could. 2G. YouTube. People clapping every It said the end, you know? Any of this. like a... No, I guess. Oh my god, here. Let's talk. Oh my god. You want to say fact? Am I? I don't have any interesting facts. Did I? How long did that take? What time is it? Bro, as I should. 20 minutes. 20 minutes. What's up? Oh my god, shut up. I'm serious.
Like if they're better, but they're told like that